guys, it's Jess from Peace Love Books, and today I'm here with an exciting video, and I think I don't remember where I came up with this. I think someone mentioned doing something similar to this in one of my comments, and then I saw my video where I did, if you like this Christina Lauren book, you'd probably like this book. And so I decided to do, if you like this contemporary, you might like this historical romance. So if you don't know what you like in historicals, but you do read a lot of contemporary romances, I have some pairs that deal with similar like themes or plots and stuff like that. I have 8 books on this list, and it took me a while because so many historicals deal with like she was ruined so she had to get married to him, and I was like, that doesn't happen in contemporaries. Or so many, they have to get like married for a specific reason, and I don't really read too many marriage of convenience contemporaries unless it's for like a green card. So I have some good pairs though, and I'm excited, and I tried to include a few books that I don't talk about too much, and then some I talk about all the time, but some historicals, and a couple I've recently finished. So these are all like my favorite historicals though, so these are good historicals. So the first pair is If You Liked Well Met by Jen DeLuca, which is an enemies to lovers Ren Fair romance. I think you would enjoy. Romancing the Duke by Tessa Dare. Both of these books have to do with cosplay in a way. So this one is a Ren Fair, so they all have parts that they're playing, and they're putting on this Ren Fair. The guy doesn't like her, and she's in town to help out her sister, and ends up like kind of inserting herself in the Ren Fair because her sister's daughter, or our main character's niece, wants to join and needs a chaperone. This one, our main character shows up at this castle that's supposed to be hers. Apparently someone left her this castle, and there's a blind duke living there, and he's like, this is my castle, and she's like, it's mine, and it's in total disarray. It's disgusting, and she ends up staying to help him because she literally has nothing and no one. Her father passed away. He was a famous children's author of the series that everybody associates her with because it was kind of like about her, and even though she's older, people still see that like little girl, and she has nowhere else to go, so she's like, this is my castle, I'm gonna be taking it. And they kind of fix it up together, and he's kind of a very grumpy hero because of what he went through and the injury he sustained that caused his blindness. And there's actually cosplayers for her father's series that come that still think she's the main character, and like it's really fun, and I really like that whole cosplay element to this, and so they kind of play along with them just like in this book. So these are fun. This is pretty much enemies to lovers because like he wants her gone and like kind of resents her for being there and is annoyed by her, and it's so good. I love this, and not to mention, gorgeous step back. This model is on so many historical romances. If someone pointed it out on Instagram, and then I've just been literally see her everywhere. So first pairing, you would like these. The next one is If You Liked Say You Still Love Me by K.A. Tucker, which I don't own a physical copy of, but it's here. This one is second chance romance. They met at a camp and really liked each other, and then something happened and they were forced apart, and then I think he never reached out ever again, and she was like devastated, and so they reconnect when he's working at her office building, and she is super high up because her father owns the company and he works like security, and when they first meet he acts like he doesn't remember her, and it's really funny and it's really cute. I love K.A. Tucker. If you liked this book, I think you would like Again the Magic by Lisa Kleypas. This is second chance. McKenna will like destroy your heart. So Aileen and McKenna are from different society classes, just like in Say You'll Still Love Me. In Say You Still Love Me, she was very wealthy and he was not, and that plays into why they can't be together. And in this one, that's definitely a big no-no. They secretly interact and get together when they're teenagers, and then something happens where it is found out that they are together, and he is sent off to like better opportunities, but really because her dad doesn't want them to be together because her dad's like, you gotta marry someone wealthy, and she kind of breaks his heart along the way. And so it's, I don't remember how long it is, like 18 years later he comes back. He's super wealthy, which doesn't really connect with Say You'll Still Love Me because he doesn't come back super wealthy, but in this one he's super wealthy from America, and he's determined to like get back at her for breaking his heart, but there's some miscommunication over like thinking about the reasons why they were torn apart, because the one person knows why the other person doesn't, just like in Say You'll Still Love Me, and they kind of have to try to deny their feelings for each other because they don't really want to get back together again, but they can't help it. And It's a really great second chance romance, and if you liked the second chance romance from Kate Tucker's book, I think you would enjoy this one. Next one, if you enjoyed Love Her or Lose Her by Tessa Bailey, which is a kind of also a second chance romance, but this is a married couple, and they pretty much fell out of love and won't communicate with one another, and so Rosie ends up deciding to leave, and Dom is kind of like, I don't know what to do, and I don't know how to function without you, and kind of has to go through a lot of self-reflection. He had changed a lot throughout their marriage, and he had pulled away from Rosie. It's a really great married romance. I want to read more second chance romances between married couples like the Bromance Book Club, but if you enjoyed this one, I think you would enjoy Lady Isabella's Scandalous Marriage by Jennifer Ashley. This is the second book in the series. You definitely have to read the first one. I obviously recommend The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie. It's one of my absolute favorite romances of all time, but I recommend it in every historical romance video, so I didn't include it in this one. But this is book 2, and like I said, you should read them in order because there's some overarching like character plots in them. But in this one, Isabella and Mac were married, and there's trigger warning for loss of a child, and so something had happened in their marriage that really drew them apart, and they stopped communicating with one another, and so Isabella's just like, okay, I'm just leaving. And it was scandalous how they got together, and then it was scandalous her leaving, and they spend a few years apart, and then they have to reconnect for a certain reason. There are certain things that force themselves together again, and Mac really has to reevaluate what went wrong and kind of acknowledge his faults in the relationship, which is really hard for him to do. And I think that's the same with Dom. He has to acknowledge like his faults as a man, and he's very dominant in this one, so it's really hard for him to do that. Same with this one, but Isabella, just like Rosie, couldn't put up with it anymore, so they left, and they have to kind of get back together again, and there's never any question about their chemistry. They had really intense chemistry in here, but that's really all that was keeping them together, just like in this one. And so I really love both of these. Like I said, I want more romances between married couples trying to figure it out, because it's just so good, because marriage isn't the happily ever after like so many romances claim it is, because marriage is hard and you have to work together, and sometimes you can go down rough paths together, and if you don't communicate, it challenges things, and that's what these two both deal with. Next one is a little bit of a stretch, but I think the themes in it really connect, and that is Slammed by Colleen Hoover, which is about our main character, Lake. I think her name was Lake, right? Laken, but they call her Lake. She is a senior in high school, and she moves to a new town with her mother, and then there's her little brother, and they all three live together, and they move to town, and their neighbor is Will, and Laken and Will hit it off immediately, go on a date, really have fun, and have like an instant spark together. And then the next day, she realizes that Will is actually her high school teacher, and she's 18 already before senior year started. She's just a little bit older. I don't remember if she had to like miss out on a grade or something, but they're like, oh my gosh, what? And like flip out and try to deny their feelings for one another. And I think there's only like a 3-year age difference between them, because like Will graduated early and is like a student teacher. Like, I don't know how that makes sense, because in Ohio, I'm a teacher, and like that could never happen. You can't be a full-time teacher while you're student teaching. You don't even have your license yet as a student teacher, so I don't know. But they made an exception because there was like a teacher shortage or something. I don't know, but there's only 3 years between them, and they try their best to deny one another like a relationship, because it's obviously forbidden. But if you like this, I think you would not like Her Night with the Duke by Diana Quincy, I think. This one hasn't come out yet, but you guys have to get this book when it does. Pre-order it right now. Add it to your calendar. It was amazing, and I will shout to the rooftops about this book. So our main character is a traveler, and she shows up at this inn, and all the guys are very like crude, like, oh, she'll share my room with me. And so our main character, who's a duke, is like, no, she's with me, like trying to protect her. And then they end up having to share a room and have quite the spicy night together. And then it just so happens though that he is actually betrothed, and he was on his way to meet his like betrothed to her stepdaughter, who is like 2 years younger than her. So she had married a man, and he was nice to her, and she had 2 stepchildren who were her age, and he passed away, so she's a widow, and so she travels a lot. She writes books about her travels secretly. They realize that he's betrothed to her stepdaughter, so it's forbidden, and she is very mature for her age. Like the difference between her and her stepdaughter is like crazy because she's traveled a lot and she's very mature and she's a widow, and then her stepdaughter is just like, oh, I'm gonna get married, and like doesn't know whether to follow her heart or just follow the rules, and like they're at very different places in their lives, which I feel like is why Will was so attracted to Lakin, because she was just so mature for her age, because she'd gone through so much and she was older than everybody else. So that kind of like maturity aspect to the love interest, I think, correlates. And they have a seriously forbidden romance because they cannot be together, and they try their best to ignore their feelings, because in Her Night with the Duke they try so hard, because our main character is actually really close with her stepdaughter. They're basically like sisters, and she doesn't want to betray her by saying like she actually really likes the guy she's supposed to marry. So it's really good. I definitely recommend reading it. Ugh, I just can't rave about it enough. Next is If You Liked If I Never Met You by Vari McFarlane, which is about a woman whose boyfriend of like a long time broke up with her. I think it was like 16 years they were dating, and they were thrown out at the idea of having kids, and they never wanted to get married, and he broke up with her, and she's devastated. And so she ends up fake dating this younger guy in the office, and in order to like help his career and her career and help her in the eyes of society. And it's an interracial romance, and this one is kind of a little bit of a stretch, but I feel like there are a few things that are similar, and so I would recommend An Extraordinary Union by Alyssa Cole. This is also an interracial romance, and this takes place during the Civil War. Our main character, Elle, she is an undercover agent for the Union, so she's a free woman in the North and decides to go undercover as a slave in the South for a very rich family, and she is highly intelligent. People greatly underestimate her intelligence because she's a woman and she's black and she's a slave in this place, because she's pretending to be a slave, so she's treated like a slave. And I feel like the main character in If I Never Met You is very underestimated for her value because she's a woman in the business world, and she also is black and talks about being black in England. And in this one, she is undercover, like I said, and falls in love with another agent undercover, but he is actually Scottish, and he had to move to the US because of the relations with England that are not ever great in Scotland, especially during that time after like the Jacobite rebellion. So he knows what it's like to be forced to do things and be told you're lesser by another people. He did say like his experience is as no way as harsh and as horrible as hers was, but he does get where she's coming from, and that's why he's on the Union side. And they both kind of had to play a part because they're both undercover, which kind of relates to If I Never Met You, because they both play a part of fake dating. And so I really liked it. It was really great. I gave this 5 stars. I just finished it yesterday and I'm obsessed, so I think you guys should read this. The next one I read 10 years ago, so don't quote me that it's amazing. It's the first historical romance I ever read. I really need to reread it, but the synopsis is like so similar to this book. So If You Liked One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which our main character is madly in love with her husband, and then he goes missing and he's presumed dead, and then like years later when she's engaged to another man, he comes back. So she's like, what do I do? So it's good. But if you like this, you should definitely read A Hint of Wicked by Jennifer Haymore. I was perusing half-price books, picked this up because the like cover really called my name, read the synopsis, and I was like, oh my god, that is the first historical romance I ever read in high school over 10 years ago that I got from the library, that I was like reading, and I loved it. And this sparked my love for historical romance, and I never remembered what it was called, but I knew the synopsis, and this is the synopsis. So our main character is married, and her husband goes missing and is presumed dead, and she gets married to his best friend who really like inherited everything, so it was like kind of common sense that she would marry him because like she needed someone to take care of her. And she really opens herself up to him physically and emotionally and explores things she never did with her husband, and falls in love with him. And then her husband shows up alive, so she's like, well crap, what do I do? Just like in this one, they're both married to someone new who they've started falling in love with. Well, she's engaged in this one, and they become different people, and they have to decide if they want their husband who they originally loved but they thought was dead, but has come back. So these both are great. Then If You Liked Get a Life Chloe Brown, which I'm focusing more on the fact that Chloe has this bucket list now because she had a near-death experience and she wants to be free, and so she enlists the help of her landlord, who she doesn't really like, and it's kind of enemies to lovers, and they go and do things together because she wants to finally have a life, okay? And there's a lot more to this that's amazing, but those aspects are what I saw in This Earl of Mine by Kate Bateman. In this one, she is supposed to be marrying this guy that she really doesn't want to marry because she's super wealthy and everybody just wants to marry her for her money, and she wants freedom, just like what Chloe wanted. She needs help being free and live life, and that's what she needs. She needs a husband so she can finally be free to go live life and do whatever she wants. So she goes to a prison and says, give me the guy who is next to die so I can marry him and become a widow so I can do whatever I want. And they end up giving her this guy, and he's actually there undercover and is not gonna die. And so they get married, and then she realizes that I'm married to this gentleman in society when I wanted to marry a criminal who was gonna die so I could just be free. And they both don't like the guy, and so there's like that kind of angst between them of not wanting to like him and then constantly being around each other and falling in love. So a little bit of a stretch, but I think that those little points that I really loved about this are in here as well. Alright, the last one. I'm sorry, I could talk about historicals all day, but if you liked The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang, which I feel like this is kind of like an obvious plot point that's similar, but there's more to it that's similar. So The Kiss Quotient, which is our main character Stella, she's not comfortable with intimacy. She hires Michael, who's an escort, a male escort, to show her how to be intimate with men, and they fall in love. If you like this, I think you would like Destiny Surrender by Beverly Jenkins. This one is also a sex worker with a wealthy man, and in this one, in case, it was Stella who was wealthy and Michael not. So if we have two characters who are in very different social classes, because Michael is a sex worker because he needs money for himself and his family, and in this one she needs money, and he is actually wealthy, and they start liking each other a lot through their sessions together, I guess, their encounters together that are paid for. But what I really liked about these is that Michael and Andrew are really close with their families, and they really take a shine to the female in their lives. So in this one, his family, I think, like, welcomed Stella in, and in this one, his family was so welcoming to Billy, and I just like the family dynamics that these had, because then I think Stella wasn't really close with her parents, and in this one, Billy, I don't even remember where her parents were. I don't think she even has them in her life anymore. There is a surprise pregnancy trope in this one, so it worked though. I hate that trope, and I loved this book. So these both have some similar aspects to them, and of course they end up falling in love with each other, so yes. And those are some historical recommendations for contemporaries that you enjoyed. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you want me to do this again, or if you want a different kind of pairing of genres or authors. I would love to know, and that's all I have. As always, thank you so much for watching, and have a good day. Bye.